Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to folks from across the world. Thank you for joining us today for this international event on business and culture transformation. We would like to take a moment and formally introduce ourselves. We are Coach Koji and we are in the business of transformation. We work with leaders and executives across industries to help them find their purpose and align them to the purpose of the organization. We specialize in leadership and team coaching intervention that starts with what is at the heart of each leader that makes them unique. Yes, the heart of the leader, that is you. This starts with you. We translate intangibles you bring as a leader, your psychological awareness as an individual, to the collective conscience, which is your team's collective awareness, and how this impacts outcomes in organizations. Today, we have Ravi Krishnaswamy, who is the Corporate Vice President at Microsoft for the Azure Global Commercial Industry. He's a terrific person to work with and an equally interesting person to listen to. I've had the privilege of doing both. There is a lot to say about Ravi's career, which is strong strokes of transformation in whatever he has touched, be it technology or business. We will make things a little interesting by introducing Ravi with a small video. Once again, welcome to today's Fireside Chat. Hope you enjoy.
Meet Ravi Krishnaswamy, who is known for transforming the face of the CTO charters by driving business model innovation, cultural transformation in large-scale corporations such as Flipkart and Mobi that are new-age decacorn companies. It is not always easy to know your purpose and then back it up by your passion and conviction to pursue your purpose. Ravi's life is a fable of his own pursuit for meaningful transformation of businesses through technology. A computer engineer with 19 patents to a technology leader. Ravi's journey is a testament to how leaders need to evolve and mature as they grow and scale their functions and business acumen. For Ravi, innovation is where the heart lies. You will see him mentor and coach entrepreneurs, invest in early-stage startups, and encourage ideas which have the potential for large-scale impact which promise to improve living and working conditions for humanity. Ravi's focus on innovation is fueled by deeply ingrained values of diversity and inclusion of people and perspectives. This allows him to cultivate leaders with purpose and meaning, and this culture fosters a strong sense of belongingness while keeping the voice of freedom alive. Leaders like Ravi come once in a lifetime and show us what it truly means to be authentic, purposeful, heartful, and willful.
Good evening, Ravi.
Hi. Hi, Ruchira.
And thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, for our audience who are listening in today, Ravi will be speaking on this International Coaching Week, which we are actually extending to a month, on a leader's journey to transformation within the context of bootstrapping, business model innovation, and culture transformation within a large corporation leveraging artificial intelligence and emerging technology. And with that, I open the session. Floor is all yours, Ravi.
Hi, thanks, Ruchira. This is a very interesting topic, right? In this world, every company is having some form or the other of digital transformation journey. And it's the old economy companies and old economy business model that is getting pressed for change, right? In this new economy, every single industry is going through innovation and disruption. And it started with with the internet and mobile. What the app-based economy started in the consumer world now is going into business-to-business world as well. And so in this regard, if we take even an age-old industry like automobile, today is completely controlled by that EV phenomena. And the Teslas of the world are able to really challenge. And even another example of old industry I can take, aviation, even space travel, right? That is going through a phenomenal amount of innovation. And even the Lockheed Martins, Boeings, the NASAs of the world are rethinking how to approach that industry from an innovation standpoint. So I guess my topic, based on my experience, what I can bring to the table for this discussion is every company has to go through the transformation all the time. So it's not that it's a one-off exercise or a one-time exercise, but there are inflection points such as what we are facing today, especially in the post-pandemic world, where business models need to innovate because people are staying at home, people are not traveling often, people are working from home. So accordingly, the business model needs to get innovated, and in through that, you really need to take your organization culture along. And so the fundamental belief, or my conviction at least, is that, and as the popular saying goes, right, execution eats strategy for breakfast, culture eats like strategy and execution for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So very much you need to start this journey from a top-down design standpoint, where you're also taking your culture transformation at the same footing as business transformation. These are two-headed monsters, if you will, that you need to tackle for any such journey to really, materialize in the way in which that you are expecting it to materialize. And the culture transformation starts with leadership transformation. And again, it's a top-down design. So a lot of what I would love to share my experience and insights in this session is around just covering those areas, and happy to brainstorm from my experience and wherever the question goes.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ravi, for building that context. And within that context, I heard you speak about innovation and transformation, and almost as if the innovation leads to transformation. And is that true, or transformation leads to innovation? What are we talking about over here?
I think the need, these are not really that, black and white, if you may, at least from my experience. The inflection points could come from, you already are innovating and you need to transform. So it could be that, that's a point in time where you need to pick up your transformation objective. But oftentimes the big rock inflection point comes from having to transform something through innovation. So these are actually, I would say, joint at the hip. So I don't see this as two different. I guess it's two parts of the same equation, if you will. And I also think that every year, at least in my experience, every year, the charters that I run, the transformation needs to be different. The business outcome needs to be different. So the business outcome, what you're driving, all the way from board down to your line employee level, that lineage need to be established. Hence, it requires transformation. So it's not like, only when you're boiling the ocean or doing a big business model transformation is the only time where you need to transform. I typically follow, strategy offsite, where, we link to board objective or the overall charter objective, and then come with the right strategy that will enable us, and then figure out the right execution mechanism, which also includes the org mechanism, right? Starting with org design. What is the org purpose? And how do you kind of take your leadership from point A to point B in that journey? These are intentional exercise that, as a leader and as a leadership team, we have to go do to support the business journey. And so I think that's how I look at it.
So, Ravi, what I'm receiving from you is, I'm hearing that transformation is not done for the sake of transformation. And I'm also receiving from you that this is something that needs to be taken on every single year and has to have a North Star which is guided from the top, so that there is a structure, there is a reason, there is a purpose, as you said it, as to purpose to why people are doing what they are doing. And I'm beginning to believe, I'm beginning to hear what you're saying is that is how people align to what is required. And in your experience, it would be very nice to tell us how you further go to the next level to align the people with the business part of it.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And by no means I'll claim that I have the magic blueprint there. And then again, every year, as I said, every composition of leaders and people make the journey very interesting and very rewarding. So with that caveat, I would say, I think what I meant by intentional top-down design is to actually, as a leader, you need to recognize and explicitly acknowledge that alignment needs to be provided. and an explicit exercise needs to happen. It could be leadership team level coaching. It could be, offsite workshop of different interesting topic. Of course, we are all get caught in business outcome. We always do a lot of business workshop, but, I would say like culture workshop and getting the right external design, external consultation and support that basically instills the new blood, right? New way of thinking. So again, all of this starts with the intentional journey. There are, for example, every one of the business outcome in a big way when you are actually trying to transform, you go to the McKinseys of the world. Likewise, culture needs to be taken seriously along the same lines. Leadership transformation needs to be taken along the same lines. And there are a lot of boutique firms out there which are practicing this modern way of leadership coaching or leadership excellence. And so I am, eager to always learn what I could be doing different, and wherever I get the right quality discretion in terms of like leadership, transformation or coaching, I'm always earful and I'm always experimenting, I'm always trying. And so in that regard, I think you start there and then you go down to individual leader level needs and alignment. It could be that, individual leader needs coaching to align to the overall purpose. And in a big way, I would say that, as individuals, we have our values, we have our style coming in. But as a team, as an organization, again, as I keep underscoring the point that every year the transformation journey is different. Why do I say year? When I say that we are always transforming all the time, you need to be practical, like, a change of, transformation in a big scale. You can't be like, going and tiring the marching order every quarter or every semester, a semesterly outlook. So you do need to want to establish a yearly longevity. And going more than a year is okay based on the setup that you are at, but at least in my experience, I always try to demarcate for a year and establish clear goals, right? If it involves changing the vision and mission, which should not change willy-nilly year over year, but there are probably special years where you need to go back and really brainstorm and align at the board level again, at the charter level with your internal stakeholders. And then also externally, you need to figure out how to position our charter, right? And the transformation journey. And the companies that are publicly traded needs to be a lot more thought-driven in terms of even designing that positioning and branding. But all in all, I think I would say that, you start there and then you start figuring out, hey, do I need to up-level my strategy? Do I need to rejigger? Do I need to repivot? Those of us that have had startup journey, right? And whether it is big or small startup, it is a way of life. And in fact, in startups, the scenery changes every quarter, even in the big startups that I have been part of, and dramatically so. And so you do need to want to pay attention to that and intentionally go back to the drawing board to really draw things up both from a business perspective and from a culture perspective. And I think what the point that I was trying to get to is that, see, if you, as leaders, we are coming with our own values and styles, and as organization, we have to put our differences aside and be inclusive in our approach in terms of leveraging all the strengths individuals bring to the table. As a leader, my job is that, right? I need to both acknowledge diversity and inclusion, but then devise inclusion in a very explicit manner, right? That way, my style is not the only style that I aspire, right? Because then the strengths and growth areas for the org and liabilities of the org are stacked one way. Again, there are different leadership model and org model and governance model. But what personally works for me is when I leverage the diverse perspective and skill set and strengths that my team brings to the table. And that calls for really creating a conducive environment where you're not really asking the individual to have an out-of-body experience every day, because that will again tire the system out. That is where the inclusion comes in. So you do want to make sure that there is always this bipolarity, right? So, individuals operate innately in one spot, but then the org and the team dynamics expect them to operate in another spot. And we just need to explicitly acknowledge that and embrace that. The more you actually as a leader is aware of it and inclusive in devising your strategy that accommodates the right leadership diversity, and in that, then naturally you are weaving that into a strategy. So it's not looking like a square peg through circle hole for your leaders under you or even for your team. So I think those are all the things that I really keenly observe when I actually take a new leader on or a new leadership journey on. new charter on, reorgs happen all the time, leaders churn all the time. So I think it's very important, not just that the business outcome changes year to year, people, situation, and environment changes year to year. And in this pandemic, it puts us through a different kind of a ringer. And so we all need to just transform all the time and pay attention. So I think that's sort of the meta point that I want to get across.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. When you initially began speaking, I was beginning to think that we are talking about business transformation and culture transformation as two separate tracks, right? And I was wondering where would they merge, or where would they, what the cross section would be. But as you explain this a lot more, it seems almost as if it's a helix, So one strand of the DNA is the business transformation, the other end is the culture, and it's a helix structure, and it's evolving. The more we move towards it, the more it accommodates, the more it expands, the more you use the word embrace. That's really nice to hear. And within the spirit of embracing diversity, within the spirit of embracing transformation and different styles of leaders, strengths of leaders, what would be interesting to know and understand from your perspective is, you spoke about coaching, and I will come to that subject, given this is in the spirit of the coaching month, coaching week. And do you specifically commission team coaching or exec coaching as a part of this evolution, or are those one-off on a need basis? How do you approach this?
Yeah, you bet. I'll come to that. But then I'm going to shamelessly steal your Helix analogy. I think that's fantastic. But I would even say it's like a DNA structure, right? Helix in particular DNA. Basically, if you look at both the axes, they do intersect at constant interval, and then they are equidistant, right? So you don't want to let it diverge too much. So that's one excellent point in that analogy. And also say that the DNA structure is, while the helix is separating, there is always interconnected tissue, at least in the DNA modeling, that 3D modelings that I have seen. And it's exactly that. So it's not like two divergent axes and it's coming back. I think you have to keep measuring the standard deviation all the time and bring it back to a thing. And then you let it evolve, right? Because that's when individual leadership style evolves. And the individual culture, like team A culture under you versus team B culture, will be totally different. And that depends on the leader and leadership composition in that particular local team. And you do need to celebrate that. You do need to embrace that. So I think I just wanted to both explicitly touch on that analogy, and as well as tell you that I'm going to start using that. It's excellent. As I called out, right? I mean, again, this is an International Coaching Week, and I am a firm believer of coaching, and I always get coached myself. It's not, no matter where you are in the journey, you're always getting coached, or you always want to get coached. The coaching could sometimes be a formal one, sometimes be internal experience that leads you to the mentorship and coaching. But explicitly, when you're coming to leadership and exec coaching, right? I think it's something that I embrace in every tissue of what I do as a leader, both for myself as well as for my leadership team. And so in that regard, so I think I go back to, there is no one size fits all, but I'm a firm believer of looking at a yearly demarc level. What is my journey that I'm trying to enable? Which part of my business needs coaching? Which part of my culture and leadership needs coaching? And accordingly, at least my style is that I actually, at least in a year, when I actually establish new goals, new objectives, at that point, it is important to go and get your leadership team along. So that starts with leadership team level coaching, and I explicitly commission. And I've done that for years now. And then it's not a standard straitjacket L&D. I would say that it's very specific and curated. So again, I'm not a L&D specialist. You are, and I think you may agree or disagree with me. But what I meant by that is that oftentimes that my internal departments have some point of view, and in fact sometimes I want a different point of view, and so as a leader, then I challenge certain outcomes and objective, and then kind of growth mindset and approaching even the tested and trialed L&D process and behavior internally. And this is where, in that context where I mentioned, like, I'm always hungry to learn something new. If there is an innovative setup, innovative leadership coaching, then I'm always, my eyes and ears are open, right? Because there is always modern technique, modern outlook. A lot of this comes down to psychology, and psychology is again an always evolving field. So I think, again, some of these things, these times as leader, I am very curious to understand the psyche behind people. And ultimately in my industry, my IP is all people. And when you have people, lead through people, psyche is everything, right? So how do you understand the collective psychology as well as individual psychology? And there are a lot of modern science being applied there. Even this like decades old field is like going through transformation, just like any other field, to the point that I mentioned. And there is again an old economy and new economy, even in coaching. So I'm always looking for the new economy DNA to infuse in everything I do, right? Not just in my business line as well. So I think you start there, and then once you actually figure out the leadership level coaching and the yearly objective that I keep going to, then the delta of where you need to augment with individual coaching at the leader level, at the sub team level, will start forming, start really standing out. So again, that's why I said it's not a one size fits all, but it needs to be intentional top-down design. One place where it differs from regular exec coaching, right, which is I have commissioned that a lot. Like, it's usually around like performance coaching, where in orthogonal to the business journey, you have to support individuals that need that growth journey and growth enablement. And there are, maybe you call it performance coaching, I don't know the technical term there, but it's different from that org level, business level, outcome related coaching. So at least that's how I have been employing it, right? So every year you want to train and enable your bench, the leadership bench, to think differently and enable them for their own next level growth spot. And then augment that at the org level with a very intentional thought out transformation as well.
So thank you so much for sharing that, Ravi. What I'm now beginning to receive from you is that, of course, you've been saying that there is strategy behind all of this, and it's looking as if it's as if it's a funnel approach, that it starts with the organization mandate, it starts with stakeholder mandates, and it drills down to the team level, and then finally to the individual level. While it is being, the focus is always trying to align to business, but the last piece that I heard you say is that it is not about performance. And almost as if you're saying that anchor the person in terms of what needs, what support they need, what enablement they need. And that's something I'm hearing again and again, enablement and growth. So it's almost as
I think the example, another analogy, if I may throw out, Ruchira, is, think of a puzzle. Right, every year, like, you're given a different 100 piece puzzle, or maybe you shouldn't want to put together 100 piece puzzle in running an organization, maybe a 15-25 piece puzzle. Every year, the puzzle, the way it is cut is different, and every year you need to find out whether all the individual pieces are fitting into a perfect picture. Now, you will never get to nirvana, the perfect picture, but that's sort of how you should think from a mental model standpoint, right? Every year you're given a different set of puzzle to go solve, and you may have to file the pieces to fit in, right? Because it may or may not, you may naturally fit in, and so you might have to change the shape here and there. So that's a good analogy, and that's how you should look at it. Every year you should get a different puzzle. Every year you should get also like a different problem solving for putting the puzzle, different pieces together.
So let me bring this into coaching language. What we just used is a metaphor, so it's almost as if you're saying that the organization gives you pieces of the puzzle, and coaching enables the leaders to figure out the internal resources they require to put the puzzles in place.
Absolutely.
And yes, I you didn't say this explicitly, so what I'm hearing is, again, moving from a performance-oriented approach in coaching to a transpersonal-oriented approach, where you enable people towards their resources, towards their potential, towards how they can be more effective. And And it's okay that it is happening runtime. It is resetting every single year, but allowing them the anchor to bring their voice out.
Exactly.
It must be really nice working with you, Ravi, wherever you are.
That you should ask my team.
And on that note, I want to drop this conversation in a little more depth and ask you, how do you, however, when you commission team coaching, person coaching, exec coaching, whatever way and format, how do you measure as a leader the ROI? How do you express your return? How do you want to see the return, in what terms?
Yeah. And it's a tough question, right? It's not an exact science, it's an art. It's like AI, right? So you use AI and you spend a lot of IoT, you spend like a lot of money in doing some technology, and sometimes it's not easy to measure. In some of the cases where the business outcome can be tangibly measured, but in many cases where you need to give it years before you actually see the ROI, but then you look for intangibles along the way, right? So this is no different. And in fact, when it comes to people and a lot of this culture and again, going back to really engineering for it, right there, it is not really a quantifiable measure. It is I don't want to say it is nebulous, but it is. I think those leaders that actually look for return in a straitjacket manner actually will have to look at their go back and relook at their perspective, because you need to commit. See, I think you are design driven in your thinking, and then you need to place your bet and wait, right? So wait for the right anecdotal changes that you can observe. But that having been said, there are best practices that I have gleaned over the years, right? So where I would say is that, again, a lot of it I have been sharing, so I don't want to repeat, right? So you start with the team level alignment, team level leadership coaching, identify opportunities for individual sub-team level, individual leader level coaching. That will automatically make it clear what is the delta, what is the objective that you're trying to instill. So that can be the informed process, right? Once you actually create the right wanton for that alignment, the leaders and the sub teams will automatically align to needing to get coached. And so that I can't underscore the importance of that, right? Because oftentimes that, particularly what I see in the individual performance related coaching, people typically go in because a manager is asking them to go. There is a stigma attached to it. Oh, you're getting coached. There could be one of two ways of looking at it, right? Oh, individual can look at it as saying, hey, here is a perk I'm getting. But most often than not, people are basically being told, saying, here is your demonstration that you need to go show. Maybe proactively so to unlock your next growth spot, or reactively so because feedback in the system says that you need to go demonstrate this. Nevertheless, there is a bit of a pressure, and there lies the stigma as well, right? Oh, there is something happening here. And there, I think if individuals don't believe in the feedback saying, oh, I need to go demonstrate this. And then a lot of the time also is that it is very hard to change personality. And not every individual, even like despite what they say, because the system forces them to go through the exercise of coaching, etc., they innately may not want to change. Or difficult for them to change. Each individual is different. So if the eagerness and the wanton in wanting to do and wanting to partake in the coaching session and actually go through the journey for the right outcome for themselves, it's very hard to even have a durable outcome coming off of that. And so one of the best practice on that axis I look for is that, are there alignment? Like, is the individual wanting it, or the individual just want to put a quick tick mark? Then there are other ways that you can go about, right? If it is all is around results, you are trying to engineer for results in the business outcome, that the impact that you're looking for a certain individual to do it differently. There are on-the-job coaching that's probably going to be a lot more effective for that profile of leaders that really are basically trying to say, hey, tell me, hey, this is the impact I need to unlock. And there are probably on-the-job coaching that will be a lot more conducive, lot more pragmatic. But then there are people that really want to, leaders that really want to fundamentally transform themselves, at least want to go through that experience. And every learning and every, I think it's again, like, for my own self, the way that I learn is that I keep a lot of things in gray. I don't make judgment call, that easily. So my learning also, I keep it in this open spectrum. So that allows me to actually, as a leader, always looking to learn. But that also means that I need to meet a threshold before I actually transform that into conviction. So I think of it as like, I'm having my radar and I'm actually gathering data all the time, but it needs to hit a cumulative threshold for me before I would jump to action. So, the realization versus actualization for myself, there is a long process for that. And every leader is different. And where that is a strength for me is that, again, I go back to, I don't make judgment call easily. So that gives me a lot of, diverse perspective, and then I can be a lot more inclusive naturally. The flip side of that is that I take time for the watermark to build up before I turn into action. It has worked well for me. That's a model in which that I operate. Every leader is different. Some leaders are very quick to react. Some leaders are very, very late to react. I like to think I'm somewhere in the middle. But that's how I think, and that's how I think, at least my experience and insight.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I picked up a few things from what you were saying. One is that when the business transformation is happening and the culture transformation in the Helix, and we go back to the Helix, this is happening. It cannot be that the telltale signs will be there that if somebody is not fundamentally aligned to the business transformation goals, business evolution goals, the culture piece will not move at the same pace. And if it doesn't move at the same pace, then we have an alignment issue. What I also heard you say is that there has to be a gap, a perceived gap, which is large enough to cause an internal pain, an internal pull, an internal wanton, the way, that's how you, described it. But that has to be large enough for people to say that I need to do this for myself. And that goes.
One correction is that I think the perception should become realization for the individual and for the org, right? Because perception, people tend to take it for face value, and sometimes they game the system as well. And we all have done that. But I think what is, as I mature, I look for telltales, to your point, like, which pockets are realizing that they need that help. And I always encourage, right? So I think there's I think, again, one model in which that I operate is I don't come down penalizing for people admitting that they need help, right? And in fact, on the contrary, I encourage it. When I say that, hey, I'm doing something not suboptimal and I need help, that's actually a sign of maturity in the system, maturity of a leader. So I think we need to, again, embrace that, celebrate that. So the more you make it easy for people to kind of approach, and then a great thing would be that peers coach each other, right? And it need not be like, I don't want this to be this International Coaching Week. I'm by no means like, and I'm saying like, coaching is the external entity alone, right? It's an everyday being in a corporate life, and the more that you actually go to your peers or you seek out your friends, those are all great coaching as well. You don't probably realize that you're getting coached, but you're getting coached all the time.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you brought out the concept of peer coaching, because that is the one short way of creating a coaching culture within an organization. And
learning culture, right? So once you actually break down that or formulate that learning fabric, all of that, there are certain times you are learning in the business context, certain times you're learning in the individual context, culture context, and in all the coaching journey, etc., within the organization, external to the organization, etc., starts from there. But the fundamental building block is that you need to really engineer the learning DNA.
Yeah. And that brings me to a point where I'll move this conversation to a place which you're known for this, and And we would love to hear a little more about this from you and how you do this. What are the problems you hit against, right? And what really I'm talking about is the bootstrapping of an innovative culture within a large corporation, which means this organization is successful, which means this organization has a support system in place. This organization has gone through multiple cycles of economic ups and downs, right? They have survived and they're still thriving. But going within a large system, which means the culture is already in place, people already are tuned to working within that machinery, and then with going inside that and bootstrapping, what do you look at doing differently? Where do you start? What is the mindset? How do you assemble the first set of people? And how do you allow it to become a thriving organism within a larger organism?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, I think I go back to maybe the last half hour of conversation of all the best practices that I have been sharing. It's not like, something going to be fundamentally different from what I've been discussing, but putting in that particular framing, what that means is it is not a steady state, which essentially means that you're going to do a quantum of transformation. So the magnitude of transformation is more. And so that first and foremost, that you need to align on business goal, right, with your right stakeholders internally. Because there needs to be acknowledgement that doing more of the same is not what is the need of the hour, right? Doing something entirely different is where likely the outcome is going to be different. So that's the reason to go do bootstrap something, in an existing. And again, like within every company, there are going to be, and this is not that, to say the size of the company necessarily. It's not to say that large corp versus startup. Again, those definitions are blending all the time. As startups grow up, and I've been part of, being fortunate to be part of like really large corporation. I still am, and I've been part of really large scale startups. And that's whenever I approach my journey as a leader, as run my charter, I actually try to blend all my learning. Again, every year the journey is different, right? In a bootstrap year, and that's at the individual charter level could be. Bootstrap DNA is very different, right? You can't take a steady state DNA and then try to do a bootstrap DNA, to your point. And so you need to assemble the right toolkit, and it starts with the leader having the clarity. Right. And again, a lot of it, when I say that, go back to yearly demarcation, and that's a good place to start. And so, if you are actually transforming within a larger setup that's slow moving or like, steady state. And why is that? You need to understand and acknowledge that. So what I was going is that irrespective of the nature of the organization, there is always, or a business, there is always going to be cash cow part of your business that is keeping the lights on and giving you the right to go flex your wing. So you want to first and foremost make sure that the cash cow is preserved, right? And there you don't want to go like, dream big and fall flat, and ensure that you get to keep lights on and able to pay your paycheck the next month. So it is very important that you acknowledge that there are going to be cash cow parts of the business which tend to be a mature part of your business, and that requires a very different DNA, because there is already a lot of adoption. So you can't, and there is market expectation, and market growth expectation is also a lot more reasonable. And then there are parts of your org where like you are experimenting, right? I don't want to basically call it a moonshot, but you're always experimenting because you are having a hypothesis. You're not really clear whether the hypothesis is transforming into conviction. And then the middle part, which is the part perhaps the origin of your question, the hypothesis at some point transforms to conviction. And again, this need not be this linear journey, but you get what I'm saying, right? So there is a convicted journey that absolutely need to be something different to create future value or additional revenue pool or additional value for the company. And that requires a very different mindset in terms of the leader you pick, in terms of leadership transformation that you enable, and then very, very secondly, guiding and measuring the first year journey. And then there comes a point where the journey needs to change, the DNA needs to change for the second year. Again, I use a yearly demarcation. You use your favorite framework there. And depending on the larger macro setup that one is in. But then that demarcation, again, when you go to the second year, you can't do the bootstrap thing in a cowboyish fashion, right? You really need to kind of mature, whether it is your go-to-market thinking, whether it's your business commercial angle thinking, go-to-market from a sales angle, even from a product and engineering motion standpoint, you need to start giving SLA, right? You're not doing an MVP anymore. So then how do you kind of instill that culture? And then years down the road, if you do your cards right, let's say that it is a cash cow. So you do need to transform the journey along the way to kind of make sure that it's a mature business model, mature business that you're running. And I would also say along the way, not every leader will want to enjoy and want to be part of all the journey. And so you should, again, make it conducive and gradual for leader to take different transformation, different parts of the transformation, and then there is always elsewhere the opportunity is there, elsewhere groundbreaking is happening. So cross-pollination is very important. In whenever I pick a new leader or a new charter, I always look for a 2-year longevity. Anything more than that in this new age economy is going to be like 20 years in the old age economy. So you do want to unlock impact within that and get to certain level of maturity, and then you need to take a snapshot, right? And do I need to retool? Do I need to retool my own thinking? Is it even my journey anymore? Should I be augmenting it? Should I be bringing in a new leader? Am I capable of delivering on this anymore, right? Maybe it's not conducive to my DNA, and so on, right? So then explicitly thinking through that at the right juncture also keeps the journey tangible and grounded. So part of, maybe I'm giving you a roundabout answer. Again, there is no straightforward thing, right? I think every journey is different. Every mandate you take on is different. So I'm giving all the best practices and toolkit that worked for me. And so within that toolkit, you need to pick the right tool for the right application.
No, that was very helpful, Ravi, because I was about to ask you about conflict and friction, with the larger org that exists and what's happening in this piece. And maybe people get onboarded with a certain idea, a certain thought and philosophy, and maybe it matches, maybe it doesn't. But then you did address that point when you said that it's okay to assess it, and it's okay to look at this for each leader at with maybe a measurement of 2 years. And then even question yourself if you are anymore yourself the right person to take this journey forward. What has changed, right? So that brings a huge amount and deep amount of reflection. It needs absolute self-awareness, if I may, say it that way, that it requires a lot of beyond conviction. Conviction is one piece, but going beyond conviction to look at yourself deeply and look at the environment factors, acknowledge those, bring in your learnings, and make an assessment for self and assessment for others. That requires a lot of critical leadership skills.
One point that you mentioned that I want to touch on, right? I think there is always the confusion, and there lies the conflict of the old DNA and new DNA. Often in the journey might require you to go in plan, external DNA or from elsewhere within your org. This is a constant gyration, right? As a leader, you need to be very clear in measuring the standard deviation, right? Because yes, you are trying to infuse DNA, but the older DNA will feel threatened, and it's very natural. And to expect anything otherwise is I think you're being naive. So it's very important to basically say that you are swinging the pendulum, right? Because you want to, you want it to be in the equilibrium, but in any statement, it over a period of time, it either tends to go this way or that way. And what you're trying to do is that, let's say that that's what I mean by standard deviation. So the pendulum is on one end or approaching the end where you are essentially saying the outcome needs to be aligned to the other end or closer to the other end. The objective is to bring down to the middle. But if you try to engineer to the middle, it will never even budge. So you need to swing the pendulum to the other end, and almost like, you need to send that as a leader very loud and clear. And then I have seen leader myself, I have been there, learned the hard way, where people basically then think that it's automatically going to come back to equilibrium. It won't. You absolutely need to, again, measure that it has overcorrected and it's actually now causing harm. So you need to bring it back to the middle. Now, when you're talking about people, their career, their emotion, again, that's why I say, everything comes down to psyche. It's hard to measure, but there are telltales. There are telltales. There are times where, when the DNA, infusion is happening, people will rebel. The existing bench is the majority bench. It will always rebel the new guy as the new DNA as the anti-everything. And so at that phase, you almost want to overcompensate by basically making sure that the new DNA thrives. And then at some point, the new DNA is suffocating the old DNA. And you also need to when the overcorrection happens, you also need to pay attention to that and bring to the middle. To expect otherwise is being naive.
And Ravi, how does coaching play a role in this kind of heavy duty transformation?
Coaching is everything, in my opinion, right? Again, I would not say that coaching is one type of coaching. Coaching and learning is everything. That's wanting, like, first and foremost, wanting to get coached and wanting to learn in everyday's process is the DNA that you need to go instill, irrespective of what the transformation or what the journey or what the charter is, because that gives you a clean slate. That gives you the baseline to add from. I referred to that already. So, in this, right, I think, again, stay with the old DNA versus new DNA. I think you do want to have the right catalyst at the right point, right? It's that, in the pandemic world that we are going, we are introducing a viral agent to spike the protein to get the body to react the right way. And again, I'm picking that example because it's no different than aiding the system to get there by itself. And so it is. So I don't mean to say coaching is vaccination, but essentially it is a catalyst. It is one of the catalysts and a very important catalyst, right? So then often people think it's common sense. Isn't this common sense? Why are people not getting it? That's where I think external coaching, external point of view, very, very, very apt and placed and calculated, the kind of initiatives will have a disproportionate in terms of impact that it can unlock for individuals and the team and the business.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you so very much, Ravi, for sharing all of those insights and your personal philosophies of working, what is work for you, what is not work for you, and how to find our own truth in this journey. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And we do hope to hear more from you in subsequent programs.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation and I hope the audience finds it interesting as well. Thank you so much.
Okay. This brings us to the last part of the session. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and gained new perspectives just the way I did. Do let us know what you took away from this conversation in the chat box here that might, have follow-up questions. We will try our best to answer them, and if not, we will reach out to you via mail. If any of you are looking to start your coach journey, we recommend our Psychosynthesis Leadership Coaching Program, which is recognized by EMCC, the European Mentor Coaching Council. We would highly recommend this program for those of you who are interested in going into depths of leadership, systems thinking in organization, and approaching change management from a psychological mindset. And finally, we are identity specialists. We build your coach and executive brand. Reach out to us if you're looking for any of this. If you would like to know more, please check in the chat box here and you will find a lot more information about us. Of course, our website has it and all the good stuff, but just to make it a little easier for everybody. Well, next up in our series of Fit for Purpose Leaders, we have Anne Welsh and Dr. Martin Egan, who are extremely well-established coaches and coach the British Parliament of House of Lords and House of Commons as well. They will be sharing their experiences about the purpose of working as executive coaches with the organization in mind. We further continue to explore our theme around culture and how a leader knows the impact he's having, what they can do to develop themselves as a leader. We will also explore how leaders can adopt a coaching approach without becoming coaches to their employees. That's right. A coaching approach, not becoming a coach. Anne and Martin work as executive coaching supervisors and will draw on a wide experience of some of the pitfalls that coaches must avoid when they're working with high profile executives or within the organization context, all the various variables that come into play while designing a program like this. So that's going to be invaluable. We will be sending out the registration links shortly. I hope you will join. It was lovely meeting and connecting with all of you from all over the world. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe and have a great weekend. Thank you.